Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Hugh Freeze, the Auburn Tigers, wrapping up their spring practice window with their open practice Saturday afternoon, and I think we're sitting here Monday morning with a couple of different conversations we want to have. Number one, what did we learn about this Auburn team throughout spring practice? What are the positions that we trust the most for Auburn? And then I think secondly, hey, that spring transfer portal window is opening up in less than 24 hours. What positions might Auburn still need to address heading into 2025? I want to start with just some general takeaways. The biggest takeaway I have from this Auburn team, this is what we heard throughout spring practice. This is what we heard from the open spring practice on Saturday. This team looks the part from a talent standpoint. It just starts with body types. And I know that's kind of a goofy thing to start off with. Look, at the end of the day, we talk about this all the time. Football is not that complicated of a sport. If you have bigger, stronger, faster players, you're probably going to be a pretty damn good football team. When you looked at this Auburn team in 2023, when Hugh Freeze took over, I would argue that it was a bottom third team in the SEC from a talent standpoint. They just did not have the dudes. Got better in 2024. Going into 2025, from a pure talent standpoint, this is what we see on paper. This is what we've heard from people within this Auburn program. This team looks like a top-end SEC team from a talent standpoint. That's what fires me up the most because I don't think we've said that about an Auburn football team in a very long time. You can tell that Hugh Freeze has had a ton of success on the recruiting trail in the transfer portal. This team has the capability, has the talent to be a very good football team in 2025. Now it's about Hugh Freeze bringing this team together and kind of playing to that talent in 2025, which, we probably didn't see in 2024. I think secondly, there's just more things that we trust about this Auburn team. I know that the wide receiver room is one of the best wide receiver rooms in the country. I look at that Auburn defense. I'm very confident that's going to be one of the better defenses that we see in the SEC. The first 2 years for Hugh Freeze, there just wasn't a lot of things that we knew about this football team. I feel like we know a lot more, and we have a lot more confidence in a lot of different positions for this Auburn team going into the 2025 year. Now, there are still some question marks that are very important for us to get answered, but we're starting off leaving spring a lot more confident about the bulk of this roster. Want to kind of just run down this Auburn team and talk about what we've heard out of spring and what we saw on Saturday afternoon, talk about the positions that Auburn might want to add in the transfer portal. Now, before we do, and as always, the Auburn fans, number one, just want to say thank you. It's really been fun, not only talking this team in spring practice, but really since Hugh Freeze has taken over, as somebody who loves to talk about talent acquisition and roster building, this program's been so fun for me to talk about. And the amount of fans, the amount of Auburn fans that have tuned in the offseason, that have chopped it up with the boys in the comments section, it means the world. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, the Auburn fans who are listening to this as we talk spring practice, y'all are about as in tuned as anybody in the world in terms of this Auburn football team. We're going to go through this roster. I would love to hear how you guys are feeling about where Auburn sits. And I think more importantly, where would you like to see Auburn go out and address in this spring transfer portal window? Without further ado, let's get into it. Let's just start at the top. And this was a thing that we've talked about a lot throughout spring. Hugh Freeze mentioned it in the post-practice press conference. The thin quarterback room. I think a lot of coaches would see that as a really big concern. Hugh Freeze said it's kind of been a blessing, and I would 100% agree. One of the things that I respect the most about Hugh Freeze going into this 2025 year is he's looking to compete at the highest level. There's no hedging his bets. Hey, we got two really talented quarterbacks, two five-star quarterbacks in Jackson Arnold and Deuce Knight. It is an inexperienced room. It is a thin room, but you're pouring all of your resources and all of your development to these two guys, where there's so many coaches across the country that would look at this quarterback room, get anxiety, and say, we need to go add two quarterbacks in the transfer portal that are veterans, guys that might not necessarily play, but I just want to feel better about my quarterback room. in spring, especially with Ashton Daniels not being on this football team, you were able to give so many reps to Jackson Arnold and Deuce Knight. And yeah, it sounds like Deuce Knight had a really good spring and maybe a little bit of a roller coaster open practice on Saturday. Hey, he's still a freshman. He's still an early enrollee freshman that still should be in high school, but it is very evident that he has an incredibly bright future with this Auburn team. Most early enrollee freshman quarterbacks start their spring practice, that first spring practice, fifth or sixth quarterback on the depth chart, not getting a ton of reps. Deuce Knight just got about probably as many reps as any freshman quarterback across the country, maybe outside of Bryce Underwood at Michigan. That's huge for Deuce Knight. And it's also been huge for Jackson Arnold, who's also been able to get a ton of reps in this Hugh Freeze offense, and in this Auburn offense, you might say. I think that's very important for these quarterbacks, and I think it's going to pay dividends in terms of the development that you might see from them in 2025. Number two is this wide receiver room's legit, and it sounds like Perry Thompson's a guy that you got to get on the football field. This is the best example of Auburn just changing how I view this team. In 2023, Hugh Freeze's first year, there was not a single, and I this is not hyperbole, this is what I believe. There was not a single starting wide receiver that played for Auburn that was SEC caliber. It was one of, if not the worst wide receiver rooms in the conference. It's not only the best wide receiver room in the conference going into 2025, it might be one of the best wide receiver rooms in the country. And now the challenge is we got what, 5, 6 names that are, starting SEC wide receivers. Now we got to figure out a role for all of these guys. It's a much better problem to have than you had in 2023 where you didn't have a single one. And it sounds like Perry Thompson's emerged as a guy going into year two that you got to get on the football field. What fires me up the most about Perry Thompson, he's much more of a multi-dimensional pass catcher than we saw as a freshman. And Perry Thompson last year as a freshman was just a guy that he's a physical freak, really big body, runs really fast in a straight line, can go just about over anybody and when football's at the catch point. That was about all he did, though. And so that kind of prohibited him from getting on the field a ton because he was kind of a one-dimensional guy. The route tree, what you're able to ask Perry Thompson to do is much more diverse. That's kind of what you're hearing out of spring. I look at this wide receiver room and say, you have a ton of talent, and now it's about maximizing these guys. And it sounds like Perry Thompson has come on in a big way during spring. The other maybe concern you have on offense coming out of that spring practice, or the open spring practice, you might say, is the offensive line. Here's what I would remind Auburn fans, and I'm not going to get up here and say it's not a concern, because apparently it was not good on Saturday. One, it's spring. And so you inherently during spring practice, the defense is a little bit farther along than the offense, because the defense is a little bit easier. See ball, get ball. Offense, you got routine, musical chairs up front, a lot of guys playing some different positions. And then secondly, you're dealing with some injuries, right? You're starting left tackle, Xavier Chaplin, not participating in spring. Connor Lew is not out there Saturday. He's been a stalwart at center for Auburn the last year and a half. And then I think lastly, we also just have to recognize that this defensive line for Auburn might be really, really good. And so you look at the offensive line, at least me personally looking at it on paper and saying, I know Dylan Wade's a good player. I know Connor Lew's a good player. I know Xavier Chaplin's a good player. I know guys like Jeremiah Wright and Xavier Miller have played a lot of quality football for Auburn. It's been a little bit of a roller coaster, but they are very experienced and have played a lot. Mason Murphy's getting NFL buzz. He's a guy that it wasn't amazing for him at USC, but he's a guy that is an NFL caliber body at right tackle for Auburn. There's kind of a little baseline confidence because I know Auburn has the dudes that it's going to be an okay unit in 2025. Again, I'm not getting up here and saying it's not a concern, but I'm also saying that maybe there are some explanations for why it maybe didn't look great during the spring practice that we all got to see on Saturday. And I think that's a nice segue to go to the defensive line where, look, this is, I guess, to recap the offense, when I look at this Auburn team on paper, I don't see any. What players could you go get in the spring transfer portal window that are going to come in and immediately impact this Auburn team on offense? Because I just don't know if there's that many. That's how I feel about the talent that Auburn has on offense. Maybe another offensive lineman. You can never have enough of those guys that you trust up front. You certainly ain't going and getting a wide receiver. Wide receivers ain't going to come to Auburn. maybe running back, but you're hearing good things about Damari Alston and Jeremiah Cobb. I look at it and say you feel pretty good about the personnel that Auburn has in offense. Now, going to the defensive side of the football, I think the biggest storyline coming out is this defensive line, specifically in the middle, was a little bit of a concern for me going into spring from a depth standpoint. One, Jamison Travis sounds like he's taking a monster step, probably going to start for Auburn. Malik Blockton, monster step going into year two. Not only going to start for Auburn, potentially could be an all-conference player. You've heard great things from both Jordan Crawford and Malik Autry. You've heard solid things from Dallas Walker. You probably still want to maybe go out and land one more body just because, again, Hugh Freeze said this in the press conference, you can never have enough guys in the defensive line that can get after the passer. I'm leaving spring practice much more comfortable than I was coming into spring practice in terms of the depth of this defensive line. You've heard good things from a developmental standpoint from guys like Jamison Travis and Malik Blockton, and you've heard really good things from the early enrollee freshmen in Jordan Crawford and Malik Autry that make you feel good that they can play for Auburn in 2025. The edge rusher position is going to be freaking awesome, in my opinion. Amaris Williams taking that step. Kieran Crawford, we know can play. Keldrick Falk, we know can play. Sounds like Jared Smith might be a little bit more ready than we perceived. It was a question coming into spring. I don't know if it's that big of a question anymore. Linebacker position is probably the position where I love the athletic profiles. Yeah, I love the talent, the raw athleticism that you have in the linebacker room. It's a bunch of guys that haven't really played a ton of football. Maybe you go out and get one guy that has played a lot that can bring some experience into the room. Secondary is going to be great. And here's why I think the secondary is going to be great. Terrence Love hits the transfer portal on Sunday. I think Terrence Love's a great football player. In Terrence Love hitting the transfer portal, what does that tell me? He probably says I'm getting buried on the depth chart a little bit more than I thought it was going to be. What does that tell you about Tay Seymour or Eric Winters or Anquan Fagans as true freshmen? I look at it and say this Auburn, and we knew it was a good unit. It might be a little bit better than we expected, right? I mean, you have some young guys in Anquan Fagans and Eric Winters and even Blake Woodby that have come in and are like, hey, these are guys that can be in our two deep. These are guys that we feel comfortable maybe playing as freshmen, along with Jay Crawford's a stud. Kayan Lee can play. Caleb Harris is a stud. Rayon Strader sounds like he's making that transition from the MAC to the SEC very well. I don't know if you can fit that many names in the back end, especially with how these early enrollee freshmen have been playing. This Auburn team, to me, the pieces are there. There's some questions that need to get ironed out, specifically at quarterback, and that's kind of the conversation for Auburn going into 2025. You get good quarterback play from one of your five-star quarterbacks, this team's going to be very freaking good. At least the way I look at it in terms of how this roster is by far, the most talented Auburn team we've seen. I was going to try to think of a team that I think was more talented. By far the most talented team that we've seen in a very long time for this Auburn team. And I think it's relatively complete. I mean, we just went top to bottom with this roster, and outside of linebacker from an experience standpoint, there ain't that many positions that are jumping out to me that Auburn needs to address. They're in a really good spot. You continue to pour into Jackson Arnold and Deuce Knight. You get the quarterback play necessary to win at a high level. The pieces are around you. And this is a huge year for Hugh Freeze. I mean, you brought Hugh Freeze in for two reasons. One, what he can do in talent acquisition. He's done his job. Like, this year 3 team is talented. Number two, you brought him in to coach offense. This is the year you want to see this offense take not only a small stride, you want to see it take a massive stride. If this defense is as good as we think they are, and if this offense plays to the way we see it on paper, we're checking a lot of boxes, man. At least the way I look at it. We'll see. And again, it's all got to come together. And that's probably the biggest talking point is talent gets you in the door. You got to put it together in the fall in the SEC as well. We'll close it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and the Auburn fans, y'all let it fly in the comment section. Maybe I need some of the Auburn fans to hold me back a little bit because I really like what I'm seeing on paper. We'll talk to y'all, or we'll close it out there. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.